He's not. The God of the Bible has limitations. He does.
Lie. You can't.
Exactly. There are a lot of things that he can't do. Not won't do, that he can't do. The God of the Bible has limitations. He is not omnipotent. For one thing, he doesn't do nonsense. Nowhere in the Bible does God do nonsense. Can God make a rock so big that even he can't lift it? It's nonsense. The statement is meaningless. That's stupid. That's a dumb statement. That's an illogical statement. Of course not. No. Can God create a giant rabbit made entirely of chocolate so that it is 200% composed of ice water from Lake Superior without changing the definition of ice water? Can you do that?
You could.
It's nonsense. No, we can't. It's nonsense. You can't have something that's 100% chocolate and 100% ice water at the same time. And you can't have something that's 200% water. You can't have anything that's 200% anything. Okay? All right? That makes no sense. It's illogical. It's illogical. It's impossible. It's just rationally stupid. Can God instantaneously turn Nancy Pelosi into a clone of Donald Trump, but keep her mind the same without offending Donald Trump or Nancy Pelosi? Without changing their free will. Could he do it? Of course, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. He would have to change somebody's free will because I don't think that's going to fly. All right? No.
Make him look cooler.
Yeah, right. There's no suggestion in the Bible that God can do nonsense. Okay, but not only that, he has other limitations. Now, all right, Ken, how do we know what God's limitations are? Well, from a scientific perspective, we have no clue. He's not given us a tissue sample. We've not been able to look at him through a telescope. We have no scientific method of assessing what God is made of. However, we do have the Bible, and she's basically arguing from the Bible, so we can use that as a source. So what is he made of? Mechanistically, what determines his moral choices? Are there intrinsic laws that he has to follow? Is his definition of love truly arbitrary, or are there actual rules that he has to follow? Now, in the Bible, there are declarations of what God is. Okay, for one thing we know, he is love. God is light. He is life. He is truth. That's what he is. Okay, and we have tons of verses. You know, God is love. Whoever does not love God does not know God, because God is love. Not that he has love. It's important. He is the stuff. He is the stuff. So when it comes to greater love has no one than this, he's not speaking from, I know a lot about love. He actually is the embodiment of love itself. You can't get to a higher authority than that on what is love. Okay? So basically, here we have the God who is love saying that the best way to demonstrate love is self-sacrifice. What's the ultimate sacrifice? Your life. It's logical.
Amen.
It's absolutely logical. Okay? Yeah. All right? And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. Love is intrinsic to God's being. This is Grok's opinion, by the way. Grok looked at the Bible and said that love is intrinsic to God's being. It's part of his intrinsic nature, just like keratin and fat and protein are intrinsic to your physical nature. Love is intrinsic to God's nature. It's part of his body. Okay.
Who's Grok?
Grok is the AI from Tesla. It's the AI. Yeah. Okay. He's light. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. This is the message we've heard from him and declare to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. Now, does that mean he is physically light like we see here? The answer is yes. But I believe what means that he is the source of all electromagnetic radiation, because this is simply a reflection of visible wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation. He is the source of all electromagnetic radiation. When people see him in their near-death experiences, what's one thing that they all say in unison? First time you see him, light. Absolute, brilliant, transcendent light that would burn your eyeballs out if you saw it with your physical eye. It's that bright. So yes, he is. Yes. Is he electromagnetic radiation? He is the source of all radiation. Okay. So yeah, he is light. So he's not just physical light. He's also truth. And that's when his light shines, it shows things as they really are. No deception. He exposes everything for what it really is. Okay, so it's both. He's both light physically and light metaphorically. That's why he's also the way, the truth, and the life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. He's also life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except for me. He claims explicitly to be life itself. There would be no life in the universe at all because he is life. One of the things I enjoy about raising emus is not the cleaning up after them. Okay. But, there's something about farming that I find incredibly therapeutic. When those birds come out of those eggs every time, there is a thrill that I get that no other experience can quite match outside of, seeing the birth of your own children. But it's like there's this thing of seeing this thing that was something you would cook. And after 50 days, out comes this huge bird that's alive and has a personality, and it imprints on you and calls you daddy and follows you around the house. I think this is life. It's like, that is just so incredible that this thing that used to be egg white and egg yolk is now a living creature that breathes and walks and sees and hears. That is so cool. God is life. There is a spiritual experience to working with life. God is life itself. He hates death. He loves life. He is the source of life, not just the source of life. He is life itself. All life in the universe is him. It's him. And when people go to hell, you go someplace where God is not. That's why it's considered called the second death, because you are banished from God himself and the source of life. You have chosen to separate yourself from the source of life itself. So he is light, he is life and truth. Now, what is he not? Okay, here are his limitations. Malachi 3:6, for I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore, our children of Jacob are not consumed. God's unchanging nature means he cannot be inconsistent or fickle. Now, we're talking about character inconsistency here. So, he's not going to change from being a God of love and a God of light to a God of capricious darkness and hate. Okay, and be consistently like that. He's not two-faced. He's not, like somebody who's like, say, for example, a very immature Christian who acts very pious on Sunday morning, but on Tuesday goes to work and is swearing up a storm, drinking a bunch of alcohol, doing drugs, visiting prostitutes. And then on Sunday morning, he's back in the pew. Okay. That's being duplicitous and very two-faced because you are acting like a completely different person one day than the other. Now, God has a personality. He's a person. Our character is based on that of God's. So he has a sense of humor. He does have a sense of anger. He has things he likes and things he absolutely despises. He has a personality. So within that personality, there's going to be change because we have days when we really, there are things we really like and things we don't like. And so, it doesn't mean he's monotone and has no expression and has no emotion. So he doesn't change in the context that his core personality is consistent. He is never going to be okay with bestiality. He is never going to be okay with incest. He will always like it when people demonstrate self-sacrificial love towards each other. He will always appreciate that. That's what it's talking about. Okay? He is a consistent person. All right? He cannot change in that way. He's immutable. And he cannot be tempted by evil. God can never be tempted. God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anybody. Bottom line is that, hey, these are things he can't do. So the God of the Bible has limitations. He has limitations. Yeah.
Well, also what was when Jesus went through the desert, he had temptation.
He allowed Lucifer to do the tempting. He didn't do the tempting.
Maybe I'm misunderstood.
Yeah. So he didn't give it, but it means he can't give in to it. It doesn't mean that he can't be tempted. It means he can't give in to the temptation. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. It doesn't mean, he was tempted. He was allowed to be tempted, but he successfully went through it. God cannot deny himself. This is a big whopper right here. All right. 2 Timothy 2:13. If we are faithless, He remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. God is bound by his own faithfulness and character. He cannot act contrary to his essence. He is love. He can't act contrary to that. He is light. He can't act, he can't. And the point here is that he has lots of limitations. He's not omnipotent. He has limitations. And here's the other one. He cannot tolerate sin in his presence. Oh my goodness, this is a whopper here. God has an allergic reaction to sin. God has obsessive compulsive disorder when it comes to sin. Okay, now part of this is logical. How is it logical? Well, if you are light and love, so that everything is the truth is exposed, your true character is exposed when he's around, and you love, you are love, then what do you want? You know, when I was a kid, some of my happiest memories were when our family would visit my grandparents up north, and the aunts and uncles would come over on Sunday morning, and I would wake up, and the first thing I smelled is cigarette smoke, which I like the smell of because the family was here, because everybody smoked back in those days, right? So they're all downstairs smoking up a storm as breakfast is cooking. So I'm smelling bacon and fried potatoes and cigarette smoke. And that's the smell of love to me. That was like, oh, it was such a warm fuzzy because the family's together. There's laughing and joking. Everybody's happy and getting along with each other. And it was a very wonderful environment. And everybody's like happy to see you when you get up and everything. And it was like, man, that is when I think of family. That's what I remember. That's the warmth of family, right? That's what God wants for his family. Everyone to love one another, to get together, to go on camping trips together and enjoy one another's company. What gets in the way of that? Sin. It's the nature of sin. We start acting in selfish ways. We start in a paranoid manner, judging each other, comparing ourselves to each other, lying to each other, attempting to manipulate. Destroys relationship. If God is love, how can you think he'd be okay with behavior that is anti-love? How can you think that matter and antimatter can be together? Matter and antimatter can't exist together. What happens when you put them together? What happens when you combine matter and antimatter? What do you get? An explosion.
Good.
An explosion, exactly. You know, I didn't even know we had antimatter when I was a radiologist. I found out when we tried to sell some of our excess. Well, we use antimatter to generate radioactive isotopes for radiology studies, for nuclear medicine. When we generate things like iodine-131, one of the cheapest ways to do that is to generate it through antimatter. And we had this extra antimatter, and we were going to sell it to the government, because back then the Star Wars program was still going on. And so if you want to use antiprotons in your from space, you can fire antimatter at your target, and when antimatter hits your target, it causes a massive nuclear explosion. 1 gram of antimatter can pretty much take out this half of the state. Okay, so it's very, very powerful. Matter and antimatter don't get along. Love is God. Sin is anti-God. Okay? So it makes sense. There is a logical consistency here. All right? God cannot tolerate sin. Habakkuk 1:13. Your eyes are too pure to look on evil. You cannot tolerate wrongdoing. Right? That's part of his nature. He also cannot be unjust. Deuteronomy 32. The rock, his work is perfect. The rock is God. Okay? His work is perfect. For all his ways are justice. Just and faithfulness and without iniquity. Just and upright is he. He can't stand it if there is evil going on, if there is sin going on, if it's going to be there, he has to respond. He can't let it slide. He can't let it slide.